Hey, everybody. Harry here to talk about Jack Smith's subpoena to Ivanka and Jared. So we got word of that, and it was sort of thunderous. Is it a big, aggressive move? Yeah, it's pretty big and aggressive. In general, people of that stature are often treated with kid gloves by DOJ. They maybe would come in for a voluntary interview. Jack Smith is having none of it, and this really shows that he is, a pedal to the metal prosecutor generally, and in this investigation, not really changing his MO in any way, notwithstanding that the target is the former president of the United States, speaking of whom, he's got to be fit to be tied at the prospect of Ivanka having to show up, his daughter, how dare you, but, more to the point, and give inculpatory information about him. Now, people have said, well, she won't really, will she? Let's look at that a little more closely. It is true that when she testified to the January 6th committee, she was, I would say, hedged, kind of impressionistic. It was a big deal that she offered up she believed Bill Barr that there was no fraud in the election, and B, an impression of the phone call with Pence from her, listening to it from her dad's side as something like heated, and you could see she was, even that had to be sort of pulled out of her, and she otherwise was a little bit sort of vacuous, and I'm not, other people think she may have had convenient losses of memory and the like. I'm not saying that that's exactly the case, but she was not a, deeply cooperative witness. Going in front of the grand jury, I think, is sobering and focusing in that sense. It could be that there are some private conversations with her dad that she will continue not to remember, technically perjury, but nothing that she would be prosecuted for. But there's a lot else there for her. For one, she was, if you remember, the person who everyone went to and said, you got to stop it, this is crazy, etc. All those conversations not only are relevant, but she's got to cop to and give the details of, because otherwise other people will say to them, or she denies they happened. That's walking right into perjury charges. It will not be credible if she says she never talked to her father and never says anything about it. Just generally, she's very much on the scene, especially January 6th. We now know that she was, basically going with him to the ellipse, would have seen his mood, everything about him. And of course, the whole afternoon when the marauders are marauding, and Trump is apparently jubilant and, nose stuck to the TV screen. She's the one who sees him a fair bit and tries unsuccessfully to stop things. She can talk about Mark Meadows. She can talk about those things. She had that day some interactions with her chief of staff, who will testify, and if they vary, that's more hot water for Ivanka. Even Jared, switching gears here, it's true that he gets in late from his Abraham Accords kind of final mission on January 6th, but he's there the whole time. He's a very before then, he's a very trusted confidant, and he is there at the end, and he styles himself, I think, as a sort of sober, rational guy. I mean, I think it's quite likely, if asked, he will definitely say there was nothing there and he thought it was a bad idea and the like. So they have real testimony to give. The fact that Smith is going for it means, well, first it means, again, he's much closer to the end of his investigation of the January 6th stuff. There's a very glancing way where they might come into play on Mar-a-Lago, but you have to imagine it's about January 6th, and so it's of a piece with the Pence subpoena. It's also of a piece with it sort of stylistically or prosecutorially, if you will, in the sense that Smith is obviously taking the view, former vice president, daughter of the former president, who cares? I want their testimony, and I want them in the grand jury. I want them to raise their right hand. I want them to know this is under penalty of perjury. And the same thing with Jared. So he almost certainly had to get high-level approval for Ivanka, and that is an additional indication that DOJ is kind of giving him free rein to take the investigation where he will. Now, I do want to emphasize the fact that these are kind of last moves of a prosecutor, as I see it, and I think many of my colleagues do. It does not equate to charges next week, right? There's a lot that can still happen with these last moves, including potentially shaking loose a cooperator. For example, Mark Meadows, who holds the keys to the kingdom, and it's be very interesting to see what happens still. But we learn from the Ivanka Jared subpoena. First, he's uncowed as we've known before, and aggressive, just going for it and getting the support of DOJ to go for it. Second, they are really inner circle stuff, and he can get real things from them. Third, it's not good enough to have an interview or the January 6th committee information. He wants them in the hot seat. And then fourth, I just think for Ivanka, it's and a special, steam will be coming out of the ears of the former president. So we'll see what happens in the grand jury. When a witness has come in, they're allowed to talk. It's just the government that can't give any information. That's one of the reasons, by the way, that the whole brouhaha with the 4-person down in Fulton County is really basically overdone. Not nothing, but overdone. Maybe I'll talk about that separately. So we could find out once they testify, but, he swings his lasso and lassos those two. It shows he is really, not kidding around. Okay, so we'll see what happens when they actually testify. And they may try to resist. Here's the last point to make with an executive privilege argument. That's the only argument I can see they're possibly happening, unless they want to take the Fifth Amendment. Young people, Ivanka maybe toys with the political future. Does she want to do that? Wouldn't think so, but I'm not sure. But the executive privilege argument really shouldn't fly, and the courts, not only shouldn't it fly, but it should fall to earth quickly. Unlike, say, the Mike Pence legislative one, executive privilege, it's really well established for 6 reasons. It doesn't make it. So they can try to delay, but the delay will be brief while something goes quickly up and down the BC circuit. And then their time comes, come in, raise your right hand up. And something else to mention is that Ivanka, it's a bit of an insurance policy for Mike Pence. He was subpoenaed. He did a fairly clever thing by doing this meritless, but at least sort of obscure or novel legislative speech or debate claim. And he might be out of commission for a while. Smith said, I don't care. Here's your subpoena. But Ivanka is at least in the room for some of the conversations, just on her dad's side. But what her dad said and her dad's mood, that's going to be pretty important anyway. So that's part also of what's going on. There you have it. Definitely need the testimony. Definitely treating them like any other witness. Definitely should be able to get it in fairly short order. And there you have it. If and when they do testify, we may learn some things. If so, I'll be back to talk to you about it. Even if not, we're going to have some really interesting grand jury days coming up and pretty soon. And when those days happen, I'll be back. Until then, talk to you later. Thanks for tuning in. If you enjoyed this video and other Talking Feds content, please take a second to like and subscribe. Talk to you later.